This is kind of the areas where our operating divisions are at, the wholesale operations. We've got 9 campuses. We represent mainly the kind of center part of the U.S. Some of the names of our banners, some of them may be, that you recognize, maybe others you don't. But a lot of different names of companies. Some of them, we have members that have a single store, and we have members that have 200 or 300. So it's a variety of different types of stores and different areas, different formats, and different types of operations. And these are the counties that our stores serve. So as you can see in the center part of the U.S., the majority of counties, especially in the Midwest, Southwest, we're a little bit newer to the upper Midwest and also to the Great Lakes area. We've only been there since 2016, but we're growing very, very fast up in those areas. And we're relatively new in the Deep South. We didn't open there until 2013, but we're growing and adding a lot of stores. In general, we're adding about 200 stores a year. And so members are doing well. Independents, it seems, are filling in for a lot of areas where the chains and the larger grocers are pulling out due to competition, and they have a way of just kind of changing their operation and kind of adapting to being local, and there's a lot of support for that. Our sales trend, we've been very blessed as a company. Our compounded annual growth rate has been 8.10% for the last 50 years. So that's compounded year over year over year for 50 years. If we just look at since pre-COVID, our sales are up about 24.2%. So we've continued to have really good and robust growth. In the patronage or our income, as a cooperative, we send all of our profits back to member retailers to try to help them remain competitive. And it's grown even a little bit faster. The 50-year compounded annual growth rate is about 10.5%. When we're looking at, I guess, the things that consumers are doing and thinking about, the economy, the unemployment, the concerns about recession is changing the way the consumers think today. They're doing more deal searching than they were before. They're cutting back on non-essentials. They're increasing their purchases of store brands, and they're switching to lower cost national brand products or store brands, or even looking for a different type of retailer where they believe that they can find a better cost. But some things that aren't changing is really the consumer's interest in eating meat. Those that identify as meat eaters really isn't declining. There was a lot of thought that the emergence of plant-based proteins and a lot of alternative meats would change people's eating habits. But as you can see in 2021, 2022, actually it's going back up to more in line with historic levels. Those that identify as flexitarian, vegan, vegetarian, pescatarian, eating just fish, really have kind of leveled out. There's not a tremendous growth. Those are very small components of of consumers, and small increases ends up being big numbers for them. So you see a lot of growth numbers talking about things like Beyond Meat and a lot of alternative plant-based proteins, that the sales are up 50%. Well, yeah, when you're 0.1% of the entire market, it doesn't take a lot to have a 50% growth, right? So but it's still not mainstream. Some other things that I thought that were kind of interesting, I think, for you is to look at how product differentiating strategies are very, very successful at retail, and something that we search for. As independent grocers, there's a lot of talk this morning, and the whole reason I'm here is that we're aligned on one thing for sure, and that is that we believe that there's a lot of antitrust or anti-competitive activities that are happening that's affecting all of us. Affects us as retailers, affects you as ranchers and farmers and cowboys and producers, and everybody in between. And so if we can't always buy the best and can't have the lowest price, we have to find ways to differentiate our business in a positive way. And that's what we do as independents. And when we're talking specifically about what they're looking for, the consumers, because that's what matters to us, their number one thing says a local assortment throughout the store is their number one attribute that they're looking for is in a product differentiating strategy. 83% of consumers said that, and actually our retailers cite that that's a 58% success for driving sales for them. Second, here I think that's interesting for this group is an organic assortment throughout the store is also high at about 78%, and it's about a 58% success rate, the same. And meat and poultry program, having a service counter, having custom cuts, being able to cut it in store to the expectations and the needs of the consumer also is very high at 64%. And it has about a 73% success rate as far as being a sales driver. So why am I telling you that? Having locally grown, locally raised product that consumers know where it comes from is very, very valuable. And it aligns perfectly with what independent grocers do and what we look for partners for the future. And so coming up with an alternative strategy, an alternative distribution channel to be able to get your products in our stores is something that's of very high interest to us. Consumers were asked a question about level of agreement with food and meat attitudes. And so meat and poultry belong to a healthy, balanced diet. 73% say yes. I like to know where my food comes from is the number 2 response. 63%, I like to know where my food comes from. If they're buying ambiguous at best, meats, poultry, that's a concern to the consumer. And when they have clarity, if they know even the farmer, if they know the rancher, if they know where it comes from and they know the agriculture and feeding habits, how important is that to a consumer? I know it would be important to my mom and it's sure important to my wife and to our kids. And so we believe that's very important. I make an effort to make healthy and nutritious food choices. I try to do my part for the environment. I like to make an effort to buy from companies that care about worker safety and welfare, thinking about the huge factory production facilities and the difference that and the growing habits and kind of the factory farm versus what you do. Animal welfare concerns impact my food purchase decisions. 45% of consumers said that, and I'm actively trying to reduce my consumption of meat and poultry. It remains about the same, about 37%. Considerations when selecting your purchase in the meat department, better for me and my family is top. It's about 64% this year. Better for the planet, 32%. Better for the farmer and worker, 35%, and better for the animal, 31%. The meat industry as a total is about, for fresh meat, is about $81 billion overall. And when we break that down, of course, beef is the lion's share of that, about 53%. But when we start to sub-break it down and go into what I call claims-based meat and poultry, that is meats and poultry that have specific claims about that it is better for you because, and then fill in the blank, that it's either organic or it is free from antibiotics or it's grass-fed and natural. Those are claims-based things. As you can see, the really big one, or the biggest of that group, is antibiotic-free, where consumers are today at about 10.8% of all sales are in those areas. Organics follow at 1.7%, and then of course grass-fed of the minority, but still a substantial amount at $792 million or 1%. So we talked yesterday a bit about what is the problem that OCM is trying to solve, and from our perspective and your perspective, the real interest is how do we get from the hoof to the store shelf? How do we get the products that you prepare all the way to the store shelf? And we had discussions yesterday, and you know what we can bring, and what I believe there's a true interest out there with other companies as well, and also on food service for mainly the independent type restaurants, is to have access to your products. And so how do we get it from the hoof to the store, right? How do we get it to the shelf? How do we get it to the consumer? And so some notions that we had around that was that local farmers and ranchers would sell, and of course I say beef, but it applies to all meat categories, sell to our members, and to align existing and future processing and fabrication facilities with the ranchers and farmers that are in your organization, to regionalize these rancher groups around processing and fabrication capacities, and to develop consistent standards and supply for each production facility to meet consumer demand. That doesn't mean that we need the same breed of cattle in South Louisiana that we need in Nebraska. What it means is we need to have consistent standards so that we can depend on getting the same thing every time we get it. And we can come up with broad enough standards to where that it can work for everyone. What we would love to do is much like what Scott is doing in Oklahoma, to be able to sell certified Oklahoma beef inside of our stores, and to be able to do that in each area. We can even regionalize to where it would be Southeastern or it'd be Midwestern or whatever it may be, but to where it's from small farmers and to where it's from the ranchers and people that are in the areas that they have that it does make a difference for them. But we need to develop a way that we can have it every day. That would be our preference, because from our standpoint, is it possible to sell products that you have in a more of a la carte kind of sporadic basis? Of course it is. We do that already. We have the example I gave yesterday. I'm from Tennessee, but I lived in South Louisiana before I came here. And we of course had Creole tomatoes that came in season each year, and it was a big deal. And so we would entice customers, weeks before the Creole tomatoes would be there. And we knew exactly from our farmers when our Creole tomatoes would be in, and 10 more days, 9 more days, 8 more days, they come to buy them. They love them. And we do the same thing with Copper River salmon that comes from Alaska. And we do the same thing with all kinds of products. Absolutely, that's a strategy, but it's very small. And if we want to enlarge that, what I would suggest we do is figure out a way that you can aggregate your ranching and aggregate your production to where you have coordinators that help you to plan when the cattle come to market, where we can have a consistent supply that'll allow us to have it 365 days out of the year, that it can move through the system. It can have a dedicated space on the store shelf. We can build branding around that to where we can identify. We explain the story about your farms and introduce you into the process. Going back to what the consumer said, I want to know where my food comes from. And they want to know about the agricultural processes, and they want to know about the animal welfare and about how the farm workers and the conditions that they work in. That's important to them. And they also want to know that it meets their expectations as far as for standards. We know that you can exceed in all of those. This is something you take great pride in, many of your third, fourth, fifth generation. And in order to have a sustainable future, we need to be able to build enough volume to where we can sell that for you every day. And if Walmart turns right, we turn left. And we love having something that's a differentiating strategy. And you're together because you want to have a different way to go to market. We want to have a way to go to market with you. And so how can we do that? We really need a single point of contact for each of those regions that we work in for purchasing and supply and logistics. So whether it's a single fabrication and processing facility or a consortium of those within each one of those facilities around our warehouses that go out 350 miles and cover 400 to 500 stores per facility, we just need to have somebody that's going to be that traffic cop. And I believe there's a great opportunity for OCM to help and organize you to where you can bring those things to market and to identify and to come up with like-minded processors, that we come up with common standards, or at least through the fabrication process that there's expectations on what the trim will be that everybody would abide by. That'll come in the same way. So our meat managers don't kill us whenever it comes in looking one way one time and another way a different time. They need to have some consistency because they plan around that. From our standpoint, we're proposing to serve as the independent supermarket channel distribution partner to serve our member stores by having local and unique retail product in the shelves of our stores. I know Scott's already working with some of our members, and it's a very clunky way they have to get it to those stores because they literally have to go through and get a processor and then get it to the store, which is hard to do. It's very difficult to do. Member stores, our stores would sign on to what I call a program instead of a product. A product buyer buys each individual transaction. So they think about all their options today and they decide if they're going to buy their peaches from this guy or buy their peaches from that guy. That really doesn't work for consistency. It doesn't work for you as a farmer and rancher. It doesn't work for you when you're to where each day you have to speculate as to who's going to buy. A program means they sign up and they commit to a consistent space and a consistent stock, that they stock and sell the same thing all the time. And then we build in that planning process to where that the flow through your feeding processes and your breeding and when it goes to be finished and processed, that it all follows what the retailers and the consumers need and when they're going to buy it. So having that program instead of selling it a product at a time is essential for the consistency that you need. And having these local and regional branding and marketing programs in order to really feature and to play up the story. One of the greatest things that you have, in addition to the genetics and the wonderful farms and your skills and the hard work that you've put into this, one of the biggest things that you have is your story and about the pride that you take in what you're not trying to sell commodities. You're trying to sell things that you take pride in, that is a reflection of you as a rancher and farmer. And that matters, as I said, when we were talking about the consumers. So that's kind of I guess, the discussion I've been having with Mike and with the others with OCM. And I see it as a tremendous opportunity for you. And if there's a concern about where do I sell my meat, we can solve that problem. How do I get it to the store? That's what we do. We need to have you to organize to get it from the hoof to the box so I can get the box to the store. And then we can build the programs. We can build a consistency. And so that would be my suggestion to you as a group. I'm happy to take any questions that you have. Chances are, if it's very technical at all, I'm probably going to have to call a friend. But if it's general, I'd be happy to do that. I'm just a grocer, a lifetime grocer.
Do you have any figures that since inflation's hit, what the average families, what percent of their income is spent on groceries now?
Well, I can tell you that the per capita weekly expenditures for food at home now, national average is $53 per week per capita. So every man, woman, and child averages $53 per week. That amount is up 11.2% over the same time last year. Now it varies significantly by demography. So you have people that are buying beans for their protein, and you have people that are buying filet mignon for their protein. So it can vary widely, but those are the averages. What I can tell you is that while our sales are up this year over year, our units are slightly down. We had last year was the highest year ever in the history of getting governmental assistance. Government provided assistance. This number will knock your hat off. Was 31% of all personal income last year, 31%. The highest it's ever been in history was 19%. And so what happened is by driving up personal income with 31% of it being provided by your taxes, we stimulated a lot of excess purchasing. Last year, we have never sold as much lobster and crab. And people really ramped it up because we're making it rain. And so that, of course, has gone away this year. And we're dealing with that, but dollars are still up because inflation is up, but units are down slightly, and it applies to meat as well. Meat, as far as tonnage, overall is down about 0.3%, and beef is down a little more. Beef is actually hurting just a little bit more than as far as on tonnage. It's down about 3.2% as far as on beef. So we have had a decline as far as in beef, because it is more expensive of the proteins. They kind of follow that food chain. I want a steak, and if I'm not going to eat a steak, I'll down trade and I'll buy this, and then I go to a pork chop, and then I'll go down to go to chicken. Of course, chickens are rivaling, especially if it's a chicken wing, it's rivaling a lot of everything else. But they have kind of a pecking tree, and then they're on to pintos if they drop all the way off the meat for their protein. But anyway, I don't know what percentage that is, but you could figure that pretty easily. So if you said that on a household income, we're still somewhere around 2.9 persons per household. You're at $52 as far as per capita weekly. And then you say that the median household income now is about $52,000 a year nationally. You can kind of come up with that percentage, but it sounds like food is probably going to be somewhere around, say, 10 to 13%.
David, thank you for coming. I happen to be involved in a community-owned grocery store.
Oh, great.
Rural America deal. So we did a restaurant, and we invested to keep our grocery store. We're down to 310, and we need a grocery store. And so, some of us put money together to do that. I've worked on the issue, and I don't know if you guys may be able to help do that. I think we have an affiliated grocery deal in Bird City. We used to buy groceries through them, and then go pick them up and deliver them back to town. I've brought up the idea to them about satellite stores working with like Dillon's. Dillon's a big deal in our area, Kansas.
Yeah.
We, they didn't want to do that. They didn't want to take that on. To me, that makes sense to move that to a satellite store, smaller, but still could produce a lot of opportunity and purchase price.
I have some members doing it. We have some members that are doing it today, where they have certain days to go to certain towns. So they have trucks that are set up with actual shelving that goes along the side of it, and they travel and they have a fixed day. Rich Neiman, which is out of Neiman Foods, which is out of Champaign, Illinois. He has some rural areas in Illinois, Indiana, Missouri. So he has kind of it's kind of back to the future. We started there, by the way, in the 1800s. There was the rolling stores, of course, had horses involved back then. But so yes, it is kind of because there's a lot of food deserts. There's a lot of underserved areas that don't have access to fresh food. Dollar General is the closest thing they have to it, and one cannot live with spam, on Spam and Cheetos. So there's a lot of people that have adapted, but we do have retailers that's done that. So there are some models that you could look at if you have interest. Not sure any of them are profitable. Generally, what they're doing it as something because they just don't have enough business to have it in another town. It's a goodwill gesture. It's something that they're doing really just for humanity in general, which is a good thing to do. Because we do a lot to try to build brands anyway. But yes, that is a thing. I'm not sure any of it is profitable yet, but yes, sir.
Okay. Well, my other question was, I understand the consistency issue you're talking about. Vaughn and I raised Angus cattle, and I always remember, years ago, 30 years ago, the idea was it doesn't matter the end point of a fat calf. To get there to that point, and the same thing, consistency you're talking about, we have to get people enlightened to that because of the meat quality and tenderness and everything. And I get that. I think we could sell that to some people to get on board with that, provide the supply for what you're needing. But the box beef deal, and you mentioned a minute ago, I believe you do sell box beef, so then you get to cut in at the local deal, which helps sales, and I appreciate that. So I think we will try to work on that part of the consistency. There's a lot of niche markets, but like you say, you eat consistent product.
Yeah, the niche, it's great. It's great to get the local restaurant and somebody that's going to, buy this. It's just, it's going to be really, really small. And the consistency thing for them, it's important too, but they can hone in on one individual farmer that provides them with, their pork or their poultry or their beef. And for us, I don't want people to get concerned and saying, oh, well, I've been in red Angus for the last, 65 years, and I'm not going to change. I'm not going to be a black Angus, thing. Fine. Within our tiers, let me illustrate what it looks like today, the wholesale supply channel for us. So within our tiers, we have way too many already, but everybody wants to differentiate. So just here in Kansas City, just right here, just in this market, we have everything from su carne, Mexican beef, because that's what they want to buy, to no roll, which is utility grade beef, which some people wants to buy, to select, unbranded select. So it's every packer. It may be National today, it may be tomorrow, it may be Tyson, tomorrow, next day, it may be JBS, anybody's. Then you go to like black, or go to Angus select. Then you go to choice, unbranded. Then you go to, in each one of those, we have to have it every day. Whatever they decide they want to be on, they don't want to buy select one day and then buy prime the next day and then go back down to no roll or su carne. They lock in on that lane because that consumer, they don't know what all these terms mean. It doesn't, they go out there and they go looking at it and it's red and they put it in the cart and they take it through their life. If they carried home prime today and they tell their neighbors how great it is, they have them all over for a barbecue, and we're selling su carne the next time and they take it home, they're going to kill somebody. So the thing from our standpoint, and then choice Angus on top of choice, then choice Angus, and then we have CAB, then we have certified Hereford. This is just here. And then you go to the other divisions, we have even more variety. Then you're going to get into Chairman's Ranch and Chairman's Reserve and this and this and this and this. Having variety is not a problem. Neither are these varieties of beef. We just need to aggregate enough like-minded ranchers that can come up with a consistent supply that we can say, what are these attributes? It's antibiotic free. Check that box. We all agree that we're going to be antibiotic free. Bless you. Fantastic. What's next? Okay, we're all going to be European breeds of cattle. Fantastic. Check that box. Okay, now we know how to market it at this standpoint. Where are our farms at? Oh, we're all here in the Midwest. Okay, so it's going to be locally grown, Midwestern. It's going to be antibiotic free. It's going to be European, but whatever that you can agree on, we can sell it. But I need to have that every day, every delivery, all the time. So we can stock it and we can sell it and we can have that predictability. And that's all we're asking for.
Do you guys see much price undercutting? Like, I mean, I know you're going to the retail side, but like in the independent ranchers are trying to sell a restaurant, and that's like a really small market, but well, I try to provide meat for this guy. But then they come in and they get a decent price. Well, then here comes Cisco or Costco, and well, we're going to do it for $2.99. Do you see that in your business much or not? Is that playing?
As long as people are buying and selling things, there's always going to be that, right? And that goes back to a program. A program, if they buy into the notion of a program, they don't deviate because it then starts to break the integrity of that program. And so the best protectant for both of us, because it's the same thing with them. If I've got somebody that's bouncing around between the different varieties because of price, they don't have a program. It goes back to that consumer that's going to shoot somebody because it's something different every time they go there, right? You've got to find your lane. Most of our stores run at least a dual program. So they'll have select as far as in their store for price, and they'll just say, this is our USDA inspected select beef. And then they'll have something else. They'll either be certified Angus beef or certified Hereford or just Angus or, whatever it may be as their premium. But we can come up with that premium that's even a new thing that's yours. It's antibiotic free. It's whatever all those attributes are that you can get enough of you to agree on. Then there's some of you that may want to do all grass fed. There's a market for it. We can handle that too. We already sell it. We've got grass fed. We've got Laura's lean. We've got all different kinds. That's fantastic. So don't get hung up and think I'm saying that everybody has to go and get away from the very thing that differentiates you too. Independents love that. They love being different. And as we get into the South, you're going to get more into the, Brahma breeds and different type of cattle because you have different conditions. And the people that are up with me yesterday that are up in, top of Montana and, right up next to Canada, they have different breeds too. Bless them. That's fantastic. Let's get that for those local stores and let them go with what it is they have. And so that would be my message. Yes.
Thanks again for your hospitality yesterday, and thanks for being here. Would you consider beef to be a plant-based protein?
I mean, I certainly could argue that. It definitely started with plants. Thank the Lord, though, it didn't finish up with plants because when it's on my plate, it is not a plant. I know the difference.
Hey, Dave, thank you. I'm from up in northeast Nebraska.
Oh.
You guys took over the affiliate.
Yes.
I truly appreciate that. We used to run a newspaper and, advertised, and all that goodness. But anyway, and I also put a ranch. It's obvious you can handle all kinds of varieties because isn't best choice your store brand?
Yeah, that's one of those, one of many.
You got all kinds of varieties of everything.
Absolutely.
From bread to peas to
All that, everything.
So this is a hoax when someone tells us that it can be done because it's done every day in other commodities, other products.
Amen.
But I want to go back to when you're talking about, maybe I misunderstood you. You're talking about just have some basic credentials at the top, like USDA inspected, right? No antibiotics. Local raised, so that's what I agree with everything you're saying, but why is it so hard to say that it's born, raised, and slaughtered in the U.S.?
Not for us.
Not
I think that all of our beef that comes, think about where we're at today. 83% of our beef comes from the big packers, and all they have is USA Canada product. It doesn't differentiate whether it's USA or Canada. We don't know where the cattle are at. And so there's a reluctance to get any more granular than that because of what these learned behaviors, because we're conforming to following what the packers provide to us today. If I've learned one thing in this grocery business for the last 50 years I've been in it, is that we're flexible. We improvise every day. In the produce department, if I can get something that came from the same town or county where I'm at, we will advertise it came from that county where I'm at. And that makes it better. And if the more that I can get granular about where it's coming from, the better it is. There is no reluctance for us to say, this is raised and it's Oklahoma proud. It's whatever it is. With her is no reluctance. I don't know who it is that says it, not from the merchant. The merchant loves that. That is a fantastic thing. And we would love to sell it. So I would highly encourage that. The challenges are really getting it from the hoof to the shelf, and it's within that supply chain. It's how do we get the capacity to do production, and then how do we then aggregate and communicate bilaterally with the farmers and ranchers to where that we become like this, that everybody they're in lockstep, to where we have consistent supply and everyone knows how many they need to be bringing to market at a time based on their capacity and based on how much they want to put into it. this happens in nature. It happens in the farmers cooperatives, whenever they're doing with milk. You know, we have two of the largest ones that are based here. It's being done already, and it's being done in produce in a big, big way. We can do this. Having local meats is a beautiful thing, and we would like to do it because it's going to become more and more commoditized. The story that I heard earlier is it's just so saddening of what happens when producers then they become so vertically integrated that they're able to consolidate the market, like it's happened with poultry, where that they do everything from giving you the chicken to telling you exactly what they're going to pay you. And all you end up being is a landlord and doing all the work, and they're making all the money. And so if we want to do something different, we have to figure out a different way to go around the existing production and supply channel and get it to where that merchants that are willing to work for food, which we are able to take your differentiated product and sell it in our stores and break the nation down into areas where the people, there's going to be a lot of similarities to his farm and your farm in Kansas and Nebraska that probably won't fit when we're talking about the Florida Panhandle, or talking about South Mississippi, or we're talking about Montana, or we're talking about Washington. But to regionalize those, and we need to do a pilot, start somewhere, and start bringing it into the system, do a proof of concept to make sure that it works and works well. And then after we do that, we continue to ramp up and we take it to others. We can start so small that we just take a single banner of stores. Right now today, Scott's working with Pruitt's. Pruitt's has 15 stores out in Oklahoma. Sweetest family you'll ever meet, wonderful people. And so they're selling their stuff. They can't get it to them every day. They don't have it all the time, but when he has it, they sell it. We then expand that to where Pruitt's can have it all the time. And then after it's working in Pruitt's, guess what? We'll go to Homeland. And then after Homeland we've got that and the capacity's working, everything's working, then we'll take it to Crest. And then after we're finished with Crest, then we'll take it to all the other. So we just keep building on that. We're flexible. There is nothing is too big or too small to do it. This is not something that's a binary decision. It's about, you have to start somewhere. Right now, we're at nowhere. And so if we want to keep getting what we've been getting, keep doing what we've been doing. And if we want to get a different outcome, we have to start, and we have to get it into the supply chain and let us get it into the stores. That's what we do. I've got the retailers that want it, and we're more than willing to stock it and sell it and merchandise it and promote it.
I think I have a really quick question. I'll probably frame it a little bit as a comment, but I worked a lot with Diana Endicott and Balls over here and.
Bless you.
Right. But so this is the story, right? For 20 years, they've been doing, Good Natured Family Farms here in the Balls stores. And so it's always possible to do it. But you're talking about aggregation functions and so on. That's going to take a lot of time. And the question, I think the reason it's worked so well with Balls and Diana Endicott is a high level of trust and relationships that they've had for a long time. And so I'm curious how farmers can work here with AWG in terms of that middle section. Like, what are the transparency kinds of you mentioned communication, but is there transparency? How are you going to share the risks and rewards across the system? Because I think that's the fundamental question that we're worried about with consolidation. Is consolidation means that all the risks get shoved to the farmer and all the rewards go to the packer, right? And you've got the same issue with your grocery stores. So the question is, how do you reformulate those relationships so when you are an aggregator and the farmers are doing okay and the stores are doing okay, and that's got to be something about sharing those risks and rewards. And I'm curious how you kind of see that. And maybe it's too long a question, and I'll just keep it as a comment. I'll leave that up to Mike.
You want me to try to make a stab at that, Mike?
Yeah, make a stab. Go ahead.
I guess my first response is, wow. But beyond that, let me just, because this is off the cuff, but let me give you kind of an idea, kind of just frame up kind of a thought for y'all. And let's talk about 3, 2, 1. The three things are people, process, and technology. That's what is necessary to make it happen. Now, there's an organization that would need to happen in order to bring you together. And there's lots of ideas on how to be able to do that. But let's start with the people, process, and technology. So people, process, and technology means that you do have to have people that then work with those farmers to bring them together. You have to have the expertise and you have to have the interface. I can't work with 10,000 ranchers and communicate with them and figure out when they're going to be able to kill, and then have to work with 4,000 different packing houses, and then have to work with them to get it through the process. And then we do everything 40,000 pounds at a time, truckloads. Everything we buy is full truckloads. And so there has to be people, process, and technology that brings that from the ranch, that gets it ready for me to have in boxes to start getting to the stores. And what you're talking about is that one-to-one that you have with balls, and they're working around what it is that you can get them when you can get it to them. But in order to aggregate, there has to be a different way of going about doing it. Now, the two piece is the ranchers and the production and fabrication. Those are the two things that have to come together. That's getting it from the hoof to the box. So you have to have arrangements made, either vertically, meaning that you get into the business, or horizontally, meaning that you partner with capacity that small, medium, whatever, packers and shippers, packers and fabricators would then process it to get it from the ranch ready in the box. And so that has to be set up. So the 3, people, process, technology, the 2 is the rancher and the production fabrication, because this is probably not going to work with Tyson. You're probably not going to be able to get Tyson to endorse this. Tyson wants to pay you what they want to pay, and they want to run it through so that they can harvest income from it. So you have to have probably independent packers, processors, if you're going to go third party horizontally, or you need to do it yourself. The highest risk and reward for you as ranchers would be to set up something like a cooperative, and you own your own production facilities. And if you did that, you would own everything from the farm all the way to the time it's in the box, and you would be an alternate selling method, and that would be beautiful, but that's the highest risk. And bringing together cooperatives like us, it takes a lifetime, and it's a very difficult challenge. There's a lot of capital. You start talking about hundreds of millions of dollars for each one of the packing sheds, and you all have to pony up even more than you do for just building a chicken house. So you're probably not going to get a lot of takers for that. So you're probably going to have to go with a horizontal strategy or go with a third party. Then we get down to 1, 3, people, process, technology, 2, packer, rancher, and 1. That is your focal point. That's the traffic cop that's responsible for bilateral communications to the rancher, to the packing shed, and to us, in order to be able to coordinate those buying efforts. OCM, or an organization that you form, can be the 1. You're already together. You've got a common cause. You set up a nonprofit and you have it do the work for you, and it simply covers the cost of doing it, and it avoids the necessity to then bring in a third party to do all the work for you for a profit. And they're doing it because they want to have sustainability in ranching and farming in the future for what you guys are doing. 3, 2, 1. That'd be my suggestion. Anybody else?
While we're talking here, I just had a couple quick things I wrote down. I could find you $82 million next year.
Okay.
But the beef checkoff, you're doing more good for us than they've done for 20 years. So that would be apply for a study to complete that, and we can help do that, to raise the $82 million that they've taken from us. The other thing is, the complete beef program I worked on back in 2000 with the Kansas Cattlemen's Association, worked on a deal for the investment strategy of what we're talking about. We had beef producers, we had the cattle feeders, we had the processing plant. We asked for the consumers to invest in the processing plant so they had an interest and made sure they stayed with our beef program. And we had like 32 senators, a bunch of people in the state of Kansas to accept that, but we got shut down, because of competition.
Of
But
course.
it's a good idea, and I think it could still be done, maybe even closer today than it was then.
I think that if you think about the way great things start, they start small. Amazon started in a garage with a bunch of books, and Apple started in the basement. And so you start putting things together. And I heard yesterday that it sounds like that there's still a lot of independent processors that are out there. And some of them, it may not work everywhere, but there's probably going to be some production facilities that, whether it's, we've had very good success with the Show Me processing over here in Missouri. I know there's more capacity coming on in Missouri. I know there's a new one under construction up in South Dakota. Is that right? It's just proposed. It's not under construction. Okay. Somebody said it was a lot of money for. I believe that's where it is at. The one's already. Anyway, don't know about all that stuff, but there's probably going to be some people that you could work with to get it started. It's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to get financial support for something that somebody can go and touch and feel and see the financials and see that it actually makes sense than it does whenever it's vapor. And having the best business plan and you can get all the lawmakers in the world behind it, and it still end up dying on the vine. But if you are able to show a legit, I've never got into a business because of a financial assistance or because of something that the government did. I did it because a customer needed something. And if you start out with really the demand and what people want and need and willing to pay for, you'll have a sustainable business. Getting something for help, it's nice to have, but it's never a reason for me to do anything. I'm going to do it because the consumer has a need and because it makes good sense. And that's where I'm going to place my bets every single time. Guys, I've taken longer than was allocated. The hook is coming out to pull me off. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for being local farmers. You're the backbone of our nation. And we're so appreciative of what you do every day. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you guys. Thank you.